Everybody. I had a talk with my Liberal MP this morning. He was unaware and had not read the text of the agreement on refugees, the Global Compact on Migration, and the agreement, the New York Agreement on refugees. And so I sent him that information. The conversation was good. It was productive. He was nice and polite, even though we disagree. And he knows my position, and I know his position, and we know that we disagree. We've had heated heated discussions in the past. But this was, I think, a worthwhile phone call on both sides. He asked me to send some links that I had. I sent him the links that I have all my notes from under the video, I can just pull them up. So it was helpful to have all that stuff, which is kind of neat. And I sent him the video as well. I said, you may not agree with my position on things, but I try and be as balanced as I can be when I'm explaining to people. And yes, I am biased. Please know that I am biased. But I try and present the facts as I see them. So today, So reach out to your MP, even if you think they won't listen, or even if you think that they have they think something about you, or they know you already, because my MP certainly knows me. I'm not quiet. And I still had a productive conversation with him. So it was worth the time. It might be worth the time for you as well if you live in a Liberal riding or even a Conservative riding, talking to the leaders and the people who are sitting in the House about this stuff, making sure they've read this stuff is important, because they're busy, and sometimes things seem important and then they drop down on the list, and then they drop down a couple more on the list, and then all of a sudden the Global Compact on Migration is being signed in 20 days, and you're like, oh yeah, I was going to read that. I understand. I have a busy job too, and sometimes things fall off, and I was like, oh yeah, I meant to get to that. So I'm not trying to say anybody's not doing their job. There's so many things wrong in Canadian government right now that how many fires can you put out at one time, right? So I understand everybody in the House of Commons is busy, regardless of whether I agree with what they're doing or not. They're still doing a job and they're still busy. So I understand. All of that said, refocusing somebody, saying, hey, have you looked at this? Totally worth the time. And it was worth the time in my case, even with a very, very Liberal MP. So worthwhile. Justin Trudeau was in Calgary yesterday, and the CBC is reporting that he announced housing is a human right. So, quote, Trudeau says housing is a human right. What does that mean exactly? UN says such a recognition does not mean the government has to build all of the nation's housing stock. Well, thank goodness for that. If the UN says we don't have to do it, then I guess we listen to the UN, right? This is Trudeau in charge of Canada after all. Back to the article. As part of its ambitious national housing strategy, the Liberal government is vowing to enshrine the right to adequate housing as a fundamental human right in Canadian law, a symbolic move that has practical considerations. For years, there has been an international push to do just that, and Canada is already a signatory to the UN-backed International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, which recognizes housing as a right. So I'm going to pause right here and say, compare that to if we signed the Global Compact on Migration, we'd have a news article saying 100,000 stateless citizens are heading to Canada because you guys signed the Global Compact on Migration. Enjoy giving them everything they need to survive in Toronto, in a Toronto hotel in January, right? That's what's coming. So, and using the UN as the bad guy, like, oh, the UN says so we have to, I guess, guys. Shucks, right? So it's frustrating. Back to the article and the housing. Quote, housing rights are human rights, and everyone deserves a safe and affordable place to call home. And one person on the streets in Canada is too many, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said Wednesday. I'm going to stop here as well. One person on the streets in Canada is too many. Not one Canadian on the streets or one citizen on the streets. One person. Anybody on the streets in Canada, you better get in a house. I wonder if they're going to legislate and then like arrest people who don't have housing. Like, oh man, you're breaking the housing law. We got to put you in this house, and this one's got bars. Clink, right? I'm overstating it a little bit, but I don't know. I've read history books. I've seen how they can twist the laws, and I'm not saying they're trying to do that, but it's a slippery, slippery slope. Back to the article. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said Wednesday in announcing the long-awaited roughly $40 billion plan to help fund the construction of more social housing, repair old units, and deliver up to $2,500 a year in rent support for vulnerable families. And I'll leave it there. Link is in the description. But I was wondering, if they're talking about making housing a human right, isn't water a human right? And I couldn't find water being a human right in Canada, but the United Nations has declared water as a human right, the human right to water and sanitation. So on July 28th, 2010, through Resolution 64-292, the United Nations General Assembly explicitly recognized the human right to water and sanitation and acknowledged that clean drinking water and sanitation are essential to the realization of all human rights. Okay, so I couldn't find Canadian law enshrined with regard to drinking water being a human right, but the UN seems to be almost Canadian law if you're Justin Trudeau. So it's interesting that he's kind of ignoring this. So I found this report from the Parliamentary Budget Office, the PBO, and we'll just look at the title here, Office of the Parliamentary Budget Officer, PBO, right? And this is the budget sufficiency for First Nations water and wastewater infrastructure. So we're going to look at this within the context of spending. And I'm just going to get to page 19, which is where I was at. So hold on, sorry. So I want to give the Liberals their due. Okay, here's drinking water, right? Commitment, end all long-term drinking water advisories on public systems on reserve. Okay, and so there were 75 long-term drinking water advisories lifted since November 2015. There's 66 long-term drinking water advisories in effect, and 36 have been added. So I don't know if there's now 90 or 102, or if the 36 is 66 in there. When we look at this chart here, the 102 numbers where we started out. So if the 36 that were added is plus the 66, and we're actually only at 102, that's pretty disappointing. If the 66 include the 32 that were added and are on this plan, then that's a little bit better, but we're going to look at this. So this is the plan. This is where we're at right now. There's 66 water advisories, 2,994 houses, and 184 community buildings that can't drink tap water, and you can't use it for sanitation or anything to that effect. And then this report is talking about the budget 2016, where the Liberals allocated around $2 billion. So like I said, I want to give them their due. They are putting money towards this. I don't think they're doing enough, but especially in the context of this update where they're giving $600 million to the media. But you guys on the reserves, we're totally going to get there by 2021. Yay, 2021. Right? Okay. Here's back to the Parliamentary Budget Office. 2.6 additional funding from budget 2016. Budget 2016 allocates close to $2 billion over 5 years. So that's $330 million, I believe, during each year. Towards improving First Nations water and wastewater delivery, with 1.83 billion for infrastructure and 142 million, 7%, to improve the monitoring and testing of on-reserve community drinking water. Importantly, this federal commitment only relates to those systems financially supported by INAC. While INAC financially supports most systems on reserves, it does not support all systems. As such, even if the federal commitment is fulfilled, there may remain inadequate infrastructure as described in subsequent sections. So this is just a chart showing the funding and millions from 2016, 17, and so on. Okay, and totals, right? Right around $2 billion. Okay, so and that's 439 million per year. Right? Okay, so I'm going to just jump ahead here. Okay, so this is the results section. 4.1, what is the cost of improving water and wastewater infrastructure on reserves? The PBO has constructed a range of estimates of the cost of improving water and wastewater systems on First Nation reserves to the point where residents there can enjoy drinking water and wastewater services comparable to non-First Nation communities of comparable size and would eliminate long-term boil water advisories by 2020. PBO's baseline costing methodology estimates the capital investment required to meet the actual and future water and wastewater needs at $3.2 billion. Remember, the government only allocated $2 billion in 2016, so that's not enough. Back to the article. With drinking water systems accounting for 57%, $1.8 billion, and wastewater systems accounting for the rest, $1.4 billion. Annual operating and maintenance needs are estimated at $361 million, with $218 million for drinking water and the balance for wastewater. So the amount of money that we're getting monthly, and I'm not going to go find it because it's just a mess. Monthly, I meant yearly, is about enough to keep the system that we've got going, right? Did you see that? So the estimates of the capital investment needs are broken down as followed. $1.2 billion to upgrade the existing water and wastewater systems. Oops, sorry, it jumped the page on me. Goodness. Sorry about that. It jumped the page on me. Water and wastewater systems such as they meet the INAC's existing water and wastewater safety protocols, as described above, and $2 billion for future capital investment required to accommodate replacement of systems as they near the end of life and to accommodate projected population growth on First Nation reserves. And 4.2 talks about the funding gap. Quote, depending on the scenario, the PBO analysis indicates that the total historical spending since 2011-12 and the planned spending announced in the budget 2016 plus other potential funding only cover between 50 and 70% of the total investment needs. The recommended capital and O&M costs are considerably more than the actual and planned funding for First Nations water and wastewater infrastructure. And then there's tables that break that down. So I wanted to show you, I'm talking about current funding, current gap, current shortfalls in the system, despite this lovely graphic that says, look, we're totally on track for 2021. We are way underfunded with regards to what the system needs. And they had to come up with, they said, okay, it's going to cost about 4.7 billion. And the government said, yeah, wonderful, but no, we're not going to spend that much. And then they came back with cheaper options. Okay. And this report kind of outlines that. And this is the section that talks about it. So alternate analysis. So as discussed previously, the PBO's analysis relies primarily on the 2009 to 11 national assessment reports prepared by the Negan Burnside Limited, now referred to as NB in the document. The report assesses the condition of the water and wastewater assets on First Nation reserves, identified the capital and operation and maintenance needs, and recommended future servicing options to 2020. This methodology involved collecting background data, information about each community, undertaking a site visit, and preparing individual community reports for each participating First Nation. The NB report recommended capital and O&M investments well beyond INAC's planned spending levels. Subsequently, INAC commissioned a workshop team involving participants from RV Anderson Associates, RVA, and Mooresfield Hirschfield to review the recommended amounts and find alternative approaches that could be more affordable than what was recommended in the NB report. So yeah, guys, wonderful report. We love everything you said here. Cut the cost in half, and we'll do that. Oh, you need $100,000 to have some lawyers look at how to cut the cost in half and give us our 1.8 billion or 1.95 billion number? Oh, wonderful. No problems. So this report was released in December 2017. And not to say I'm not sure much has changed, because I'm sure that not much has changed. But, sorry. But it's good to know that it's as current as it can be. And unless, well, and this lovely document here is updated on November 19th. So there are at least 66 boil advisories in effect at this point in time. And what I wanted to show you was, here's our foreign spending. Maxime Bernier is talking about cutting foreign spending, but here's our foreign spending. So we are between 50 and 75% underfunded for giving clean drinking water to our First Nation people. However, we send $764,333,295 to unspecified bilateral commissions. We send $436 million odd dollars to Asia. We send $378 million to Africa. We send $232 million to Afghanistan. We spend $223 million to the Americas. $192 million to Ethiopia. So you're getting my point? We're spending a lot of money on foreign countries, and we have Canadians who don't have access to clean drinking water. And a report, and maybe these aren't all the reports, maybe this isn't the premier report, but the office of the PBO is a Canadian governmental agency. Presumably they're not lying. Presumably it's a reliable report, right? Like this isn't Joe from Joe's basement saying, yeah, we're underspending on this. This is a parliamentary, a budgeting office. This should mean something. And we really should have a conversation about how much of our money should we be spending in other countries when we have a percentage of our population, and a percentage of our population that this government, the Liberal government, has said that they want to repair relations with. Well, they're splashing cash all over the world, and they're not spending any of that money. Well, they're spending some of it, but not what was recommended. Right? So that seems like a strange choice. And there's many of these strange choices, and there's many more foreign investments that aren't listed in this This is just our official foreign aid. This is like approved. Yeah, we all agree that that Jordan needs $157 million every year. Yeah, we all agree for that, right? That's what this is. I'm not even talking about all the extra spending that Trudeau's done, building roads in India and et cetera, et cetera. I was going to have a bunch of links about those as well, but I thought it's really, this proves the point here. And we have a politician who is actually discussing spending our taxpayer dollars in Canada to help Canadians, like our First Nations, right? I wanted to show you guys this. This article was really, really good. I enjoyed it. I kind of laughed at it because it just sums up Trudeau's Calgary trip quite well. So have a read. I'll read it to you. It says, quote, "Trudeau, why did you even come to Calgary? Really a case of big hat, no cattle. You'd find more substance in an old Seinfeld script than the repeated tiresome talking points of Trudeau while he rolled out his shtick to Calgary at the boiling point. In fact, the only thing of substance this day are the pro-pipeline protesters outside Calgary's Hyatt Regency. Them and all the cops and all the security guards inside the hotel, an impressive, offensive line for the Prime Minister who's speaking to a business crowd in a ballroom up a couple of floors. They weren't giving him the love. We have the right to be angry. Still no pipeline in the ground while we still pay a carbon tax, selling our oil at bargain basement prices, high unemployment, 1 in 4 downtown offices empty, investment drying up. The line is delivered. Up at the hotel podium, Trudeau says he feels our frustration and understands our anxiety. The line is delivered, but no one believes him. It's simply not good acting. After he speaks, you can't pin the Prime Minister down at the question and answer session. Trudeau says he's working to get the Trans Mountain Pipeline extension built. How often have we heard that song before? Every time you hear Trudeau say the pipeline is going to be built, it's like fingernails on a chalkboard. Here's a question. So will the pipe be in the ground in the spring? So this reporter, and again, it's a good article, is having the same frustration with Trudeau that I have. He doesn't answer a question. He just gives you platitudes and talking points, and it's pretty ridiculous. So, and this made me laugh. So no love in Calgary for Justin Trudeau. And I think Alberta will have a big fat 0 Liberal seats come 2019. I hope so. Anyway, thank you for watching. I appreciate it, and have a wonderful Black Friday. Some good deals on the internet today, and I'm sure good deals in store as well. Don't stampede anybody. That would be horrible. Have a good day.